Hi, my name is DM Barr, and I write novels of sex, suspense, and satire, although lately all I do is try to adjust my lighting so I actually look human. New lighting is coming next week, so I hope to look a little more human than I do today. But you're not really here to see me, you're here to see my guest, Deb Pines, and she'll be coming in a minute. I did want to say that you can find my books, including expired listings and Slashing Mona Lisa, anywhere fine ebooks are sold. Look under D period, M period, Bar. Deb Pines is a terrific self-published author. She's going to talk about how she became who she is today, and she sells lots of books. And if you have any questions for her, you can always send them to me and I'll get them to her. You can write to me at authorgroupieinterviews@gmail.com. So sit back, enjoy, and as always, stay safe. Thank you. Hi, I'm welcome to another edition of Author Groupie, and I'm here with Deb Pines, and I'm going to do a little introduction before we get into the interrogation. Deb Pines is an award-winning New York Post headline writer, and the second I heard that, I knew I had to have her here, and a former reporter, and she's the author of the Mimi Goldman murder mystery novels, which are top sellers in the Chautauqua institution where they are set. Her sixth novel, A Fruit of Lies, which was published in 2019, has won critical acclaim for being a page-turner, a great beach read, and another well-crafted, spine-tingling, and suspenseful murder mystery that will satisfy fans and newcomers alike. Her seventh book, Crooked Paths, a Chautauqua Murder Mystery, is due out July 1st, and it is currently available for pre-order. A newspaper reporter for 2 decades for the New York Law Journal, the Indianapolis Star, among other publications. Deb now writes mysteries by day and snarky, pun-filled tabloid headlines by night. And everyone who knows me will know that that got me deep in my heart. I am a punster, including her prize-winning headlines, "This is Your Captain Freaking," for which the JetBlue pilot had a mid-flight mental breakdown. And there it is. And Flake News, which I think you were ahead of your time, Deb, for a forecasted blizzard that never happened. There you go. And her recent headline, Bezos exposes Pecker, which I think everyone has seen, and there it is, for the battle between Amazon's Jeff Bezos and National Enquirer CEO David Pecker over, among all other things, his Bezos's junk mail was an internet favorite. And it also had a cameo appearance on Saturday Night Live. So you're famous.
Or my headlines are famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deb is a mother and a grandmother. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Miami Beach, Florida, and now lives in New York City with her husband, Dave. She is a former committee chair of the Mystery Writers of America, New York chapter, a Brown University grad, a Chautauquan by marriage. So she writes of what she knows. Cycle indoor cycling nut, which is where we differ. Teacher, hiker, cook, lover of puns, music, and Scrabble. So how you doing, Deb?
I'm feeling great. Thank you, and feeling lucky to be on your program. Thank you for hosting me. And I'm excited to chat about whatever you want. Books, puns, headlines, I'm with you.
So tell me, how is sheltering in place going for you?
Well, I think it's taken away one of my excuses. I always say, if everybody would just leave me alone, I would get my work done. And now everyone's left me alone, and I can only blame myself if I can't get my work done. But I'm like everyone else. I'm a little bit stir crazy after 3 months of being home, but it came at kind of a good time for me because I'm wrapping up everything that goes into the launch for this next book. So I'm trying to look at the bright side, but yeah, that's how it is.
Attitude is everything. I'm curious, because you live in New York City, what do you think will be different about New York City after the lockdown ends?
Well, I think that it's going to be a very gradual return to business, and I don't know if we're going to lose some of what makes New York City great, which is, our restaurants and our culture. I know theater can't really operate, it doesn't pay their way to operate half full to half crowded theater, so I'm not sure. I'm not, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think New York will bounce back eventually. I just don't know how soon.
Yeah. So, your bio said that you're a mystery writer and an award-winning headline writer for the New York Post. How do you do both?
Well, the New York Post headline writing is I'm on the copy desk of the New York Post. It involves many things besides headline writing, but that's the piece that people are most interested about for me. So copy editing for the New York Post involves showing up later in the day. The reporters write the stories. The copy desk shows up at 4 p.m. Nowadays shows up virtually at 4 p.m., not in person. And once the reporters have written the stories, the copy editors are the grammar, word nerd, grammar geeks. We try and catch spelling and grammar mistakes. And then the piece people are most interested in at a tabloid newspaper is we top the stories with headlines that are often, I say, walk a fine line between humor and bad taste. And so we're known for our headlines that are sometimes controversial, sometimes fun, or often fun. And so I do the headline writing and copy editing in the evening, and I do it part-time, 3 days a week normally. And I'm writing the mysteries by day. And I should say during the pandemic, all part-timers have been furloughed from the New York Post. So that includes me. I've been there 20 years. And the word is that they will rehire us in better days. I don't know if there will be better days for newspapers, but I'm hoping to be rehired.
Okay, hold just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Technical, yeah.
So you're mentioning the novel, or tell us about the series.
Okay, the series is, well, I would have to say the nicest thing anyone has ever said about my series is they called it an Agatha Christie for the text message age. And after a reviewer coined that phrase, I loved it so much that I've slapped it onto everything. So it's on the book jackets and it's on my bookmarks. And if there ever an event, I have that phrase. And I think that phrase has also made me try and up my game and measure up to that huge compliment, which is, sort of my aspiration to be an Agatha Christie for the text message age. And so what it is my stories are whodunits. They're old-fashioned puzzles. They're not the psychological thrillers like Gone Girl or Girl on a Train. It's more like Knives Out, or really even more like Murder, She Wrote. Something bad happens in a small town. In my case, it's a real life small town, which is Chautauqua, New York. And something bad happens. Usually it's someone dies. The locals typically think natural causes, or they're not suspicious, or they blame an outsider. Mimi Goldman is an outsider. She is a reporter at the local newspaper. She has some of my background, so she came from the New York Post. And being a big city person in the small town, she's more suspicious. And she typically, as in the next book and in all the books, she finds that everyone in this small town, or a lot of the people, have secrets. Everyone thinks they know each other in the small town, and some of them have been coming for generations in this charming place, Chautauqua. They're hiding secrets, and one of them is always a killer.
Of course. So tell me about your sleuth, Mimi Goldman. Does she have any sidekicks?
Yes, she does. And I would say another fun thing about writing murder mysteries in a small place is people feel very open to contacting me and writing me questions or writing me gotcha corrections when I've gotten something wrong in the town. And so one of my favorite questions of all time was somebody said, is me, you, which is something authors are always asked, is your main character you? And I say Mimi is often me, but younger, braver, and prettier. And she gets help all the time from her son, who's now grown up now that it's book 7. And he is a computer whiz. So Mimi has more of the people skills, and Mimi is a relentless snoop. So people find her a meddler and a pain in the butt. And so her son helps. She often ropes him into the case. And in the first one, he was just a teenager. So, I mean, he was helping with computers way back then. In the most recent ones, she has an elderly woman who helps too. And that's Sylvia, who's in her 90s. And Mimi, coming from New York, doesn't drive. I don't drive.
Okay.
And so Sylvia gets in her car and drives Mimi everywhere, and they get themselves in over their head, and people underestimate them, and they, of course, solve the crime.
Of course.
Of
So
course.
Chautauqua is also a character. Your setting is also a character. Tell us a little bit about the location and why you picked it and
Okay.
why it
All
works
right.
for you.
I just wondered, had you ever been to Chautauqua?
I have not been further west in New York State than Syracuse, where my son went to college.
Okay. Well, Chautauqua is a place that's a little bit hard to explain, but I often say it is a churchy, quirky, historic, lakeside, Victorian cottage-filled summer arts community. And so it's a beautiful spot with charming old houses, and it has a history, but it also is a gathering spot, just like a summer resort, except some people call it summer camp for adults, because they have a 9-week season where this place that has, just several hundred people living year round has as many as 100,000 people come in the summer for some or all of a 9 weeks program that includes lectures every day, concerts, church services, recreational stuff. And, it's a little culty because some of the families have been coming for generation after generation, and it's a little snobby because people are there for intellectual pursuits. And it's got a noble piece where they're trying to bring out the best in humanity. So there's a lot of preachers and a lot of teachers who come in the summer. And it's just an interesting mix. And the history of it intrigues me too. It began in 1874 as a retreat for Methodist Sunday school teachers, just to go out in a beautiful spot and renew and gather. And then it sparked a movement. I don't know how much of this you want me to go on and on, but
it sounds like it's an interesting place to set a book. It certainly has a lot of different facets to it.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious what books you read as a child that inspired your love of old-fashioned whodunits.
Well, the thing that comes to mind more is watching Perry Mason. I used to watch that with my mother, and we used to just watch a lot of whodunits. I mean, I did the Bobbsey twins and the all the children's whodunits, but I think I would say Perry Mason was more my inspiration. Just loved trying to figure out who did it. And Sonia Sotomayor also loved Perry Mason and went on to great things.
She did.
Yes. Yeah.
So you showed us 3 of your favorite headlines. I'm wondering if there are any headlines that, looking back, you wish you hadn't written.
had not written.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Anything you think,
yeah,
oh, wow, there was so much pushback. I wish I hadn't written that.
I haven't faced that. I generally chuckle at my headlines. I mean, I'm embarrassed some by the politics of the New York Post. Everyone knows that. But my own headlines, I don't think I've contributed to that. I think, there are headlines that were on the cutting room floor that didn't make it. And I think probably, thankfully, either they were offensive. I guess I can think of recently, what strikes me kind of interesting with the pandemic is there's so much jokey stuff online, memes and interesting, funny stuff, and the late night comics. And actually the Post has been very serious about all of the, just struck a tragic tone, and rightly so, because
Yeah.
of all the lives lost and suffering. But I remember I recently tried to do a story about the funeral homes being overwhelmed, and I wrote, sadly, one biz isn't dead, funeral homes. And my boss said, no, we can't do that.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think that's correct. So we're often trying to balance what's, sometimes we will be tasteless, but in this case, we've tried to be pretty respectful. I mean, there's some punning. We've had swelter in place.
Yeah.
And what else have we had? I can't summon it just quickly, but we've had some, but I found it's kind of ironic that we often are the ones making light of the news, and now it's more the internet making light of it than we are.
One sec again. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to keep interrupting you.
No problem.
I'm having a problem with a clock radio my son gave me for lighting, and the alarm keeps going off. But I brought it down to the same level now, so I'm lighter and I'll be able to stop it. So everybody forgive me. I have a question about those headlines. Are there any headlines that you've written that will inspire a future book?
I haven't written, I don't think so. I mean, the news stories, definitely, the news stories that appear in the tabloid newspapers inspire all my books, and in fact inspire Mimi as well. So I'll come back to the Agatha Christie for the text message age, and that's since I got that, I mean, I've tried to make it, actually inspires me to try and make my endings trickier, more Agatha Christie like, and also I've consciously tried to reverse engineer, a Miss Marple story. And what I mean by that is Miss Marple is takes the wisdom that she learns from her small town, St. Mary Mead, and she learns, about human nature and common sense and some of the people in her small town, and she applies what she's learned from the small town to a bigger place, like when she's called to a bigger place or London to solve a crime, she takes the little town lessons and applies it to a big place. I try and take the big place lessons. So Mimi has worked at a tabloid in New York City, and she remembers the crimes. So there are real life crimes that she remembers how they were solved. Son of Sam. She remembers in this recent book the story of a murder that was staged to look like a suicide. And so she takes real life big city problems, big city crimes, and applies them to the crimes that happen in the small town. And so that's what I'm trying to do. But my own headlines, the ones that I remember tend to be jokey ones as opposed to the serious ones. It might be Son of Sam, or something like that.
Yep, I understand. So tell me, I know your books are set in Chautauqua. Do the stores, especially the bookstores in Chautauqua, help you market your books and sell them for you?
They do. and I'm a big fan of the Chautauqua bookstore. It's too bad, in these times that they're closed right now. Western New York has met its benchmarks, so things are gradually opening, but I'm not sure how much they'll be open this summer. And the Chautauqua season, like so many major events, has been canceled for the summer.
Shame.
Yes, so it's been going since 1874 through
Yeah.
war, through depression, and it's not saying that it's canceled, it says it's going to be offered virtually, but the in-person gathering has been canceled for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's happening to most events.
Yes.
Certainly the events I was scheduled to go to, all the big crime writing events have all been canceled or made virtual.
Yeah.
It's such a shame.
Right.
On a happier note, tell us about book number 7. What's the story and what have you done to keep it fresh?
Okay, thank you. And book 7, like all the books, has a pattern, where Mimi is in Chautauqua. And in this case, a neighbor shows up, a neighbor who is sort of the absentee neighbor. 2 sisters own a cottage very near Mimi's, and the sister that's rarely there is a glamorous multi-billionaire socialite. She's been married 3 times to 3 super wealthy men, and she co-owns the cottage. A number of cottages have family sharing going on in Chautauqua passed from generation. Well, this Connie De Palma shows up in her blue Porsche, and the neighbors are looking out the window, including Mimi and another neighbor. And the other neighbor sees Connie and he says, "Here comes trouble." And he's right, because in a matter of a week, Connie De Palma turns up dead in a gorge that's nearby Chautauqua.
Wow.
The police are calling it a suspicious death. They're not sure it's even a homicide. They're not sure it even is foul play, and I won't get into why. A lot of everyone, as usual in Chautauqua, would be happy to accept that it's not foul play, but Mimi is relentless and suspicious, and as usual, she follows clues to more clues. It turns out many people around Connie have a secret and a reason why they won't be mourning her loss too greatly or too deeply. She has her sister who would get the cottage without her, and brother-in-law who has always resented Connie's flauntiness and her money. There's a daughter who's at odds with her. There is a new husband who has a big life insurance policy on her. There is a very ambitious young assistant who has his own secrets. And so, as usual, Mimi follows clues to dead ends, to danger again. She's often threatened or clunked on the head. And this time it takes a hunch for her to, kind of a long shot, for her to figure things out. And she figures things out in time to enjoy a visit from her brand new grandbaby.
Aww.
So
very nice.
I figured I'd throw my grandson in there too.
So, which brings up a question, since your grandson
Yes.
made an appearance, are any of the victims or these side characters or potential killers based on real people from Chautauqua?
Yes, they are. In some ways. I won't say who is who, but the thing is, in a small place, what is a little tricky is I give people the roles of real people. Like, there is a sheriff of Chautauqua, and there is someone who is, they call them the chime master, who plays the chimes on the local bell tower. And there is someone who is the lost and found lady. And so I have characters who sometimes resemble those real people. And sometimes when they don't, when they're the killer, I have to make very clear that there's people in those same roles, but they're not the people in this fiction. And one time I did, in the first one, I had very briefly the character who starts a community race. A lot of communities have a community race, like a turkey trot or whatever, where everybody's in it, all ages, people with dogs, people with baby strollers, older people can walk, local high school star runners can run, And so at the beginning of this race, this lady gets on a ladder, and she says, something about, elite runners come forward, other people please move back. Then she shoots a gun, and I gave her spiel, what she says at the beginning of the first book, where someone drops dead in the race. And she came over to introduce herself to me. I didn't really know her. And she said, I'm happy that you used my lines and all this, but I really hope that when they make a movie that Meryl Streep plays her. So people take a sense of ownership, and it really was her. It was her words, but sometimes it's not the character that plays that part in real life in Chautauqua.
Got it. So you're about to launch July 1st. How's the pandemic affecting the book launch?
I'm always very last minute anyway, and so I'm not really sure how I'm going to handle the pandemic. I'm trying to get on as many blogs as I can, but it will hurt me because I won't be able to have a launch party in Chautauqua or at the bookstore. I'm going to see if we could do something virtually, or maybe things will open up gradually. I'm always wanting a bigger audience than just Chautauquans. Sure. But that's not to say that I don't love the Chautauquans, because they're my ideal audience and really my real audience. And so, maybe it'll hurt me that people aren't there. That's this whole summer. I usually teach a class in Chautauqua, and I appear at anywhere they'll have me. I go to the day camp and speak to teenagers. I usually, and I love that. They're among my favorites. I go to the Jewish Center. Mimi Goldman is Jewish, and I love that visit too. I usually speak there and feel that people are really rooting for me there. And I go to the women's club sometimes, and the bookstore. And so that's where I really do sell my books. So I'm not sure. You should teach me. How should I go about it this time? I don't know.
Well,
or maybe I think market it the following year.
The fact that you're setting it in a real place really helps. I always set it in fake places, so there's no one around that can market for me.
Okay. All right. It does help.
Yeah. So tell me, your first book was In the Shadow of Death. And it was written in 1997. It was set in 1997, but you didn't release it till 2013. So I know a lot of people take a while before publishing, and I see you self-publish your books. You want to talk about how you went about doing that? And was it part of the reason that it was 13 years?
Yes.
16 years in the making?
Yes. I'm not unusual in my story of near hits, near misses, writing a book. I over the course of many years, it would probably break my heart to remember how many years, I kept writing murder mysteries, different heroes, although they all have a piece of Mimi Goldman in them. And I got an agent. I lost an agent. I got an agent I adored after that, kind of a big shot agent, and I thought I was really there. The agent sold the book, a series, to Bantam Books, and then Bantam Books reneged. And
Oh,
that
wow.
was probably one of the most heartbreaking moments of my mystery writing career.
Yeah,
At that point, it somehow was less discouraging to be further from published than to come that close.
sure, sure.
And so I ended up thinking, I'm going to walk away from this. I've had enough banging my head against the wall. And then I thought, maybe I'll self-publish one book. And even if it's just for my own satisfaction, just to have on a shelf with my name and all that. And so I couldn't just, I was trying to decide which to self-publish of my something like 5 or 6 unpublished, never published books. And a niece helped me decide this, and she said, why not? She kind of liked this one that I'd written in 2020, no, 20, what did I say I wrote? It published in
You wrote it in
2013.
1997 and
I
you
wrote it in
published it in
1997.
2013.
Yes. She liked that, one of the best. And I thought, if it might have a niche, maybe that would be an idea. You're humoring me as I go on, and I forgot some of the details. But what happened is I self-published it almost for very little expense. I imposed on every relative I have to help me get the technology to figure out how to do this. My nephew's boyfriend did the cover. My daughter loaded it to Kindle. My niece, made it into a paperback book. And it was pretty sloppy. The current version I have reloaded now that I've raised my professional standards, and I also hire more done.
Mm-hmm.
But so let me say, I thought I might still, I might leave it just, like I said, just for my own satisfaction. And then I thought I'll go into the Chautauqua bookstore. I'm going to tell this story, even if Earl hears it from the Chautauqua bookstore, because I love the Chautauqua bookstore. But in 2013, they said, I'm sorry, this sounds like the kind of book we would like, but we don't carry self-published books. And so I left, feeling like, okay, I took my shot, maybe that's the end of it. My mother-in-law, who's my biggest advocate, and cheers to Grandma Pearl, she said, that is nonsense. She marched back with the book, 5 books, and she said, why don't you just keep them? And if you sell them, then call us and we'll pick up the money. And if you don't, call me and I'll pick up the books. And so she leaves the 5 books. Now, you want to guess what she did?
No, I was like, what did she do? She went and
She-
had her friends come and buy them.
Yes, she had her friends come and buy them. She rigged it. So 5 friends came and bought the books. So Earl says, bring me some more books. My mother-in-law brings some more books. And gradually, really, strangers did start buying them. And he called me, and for years, I kept the message because I loved it. But he said, Earl Rothfuss, Chautauqua bookstore, you have a hot little book on your hands. I'll take 20 more or something like this. So, I'm not a bestseller. I'm a very modest seller. I have taken a tiny business and I've made it small. And I feel like I'm on an upswing. And so I will keep writing them as long as people keep buying them. But
I took a look on Amazon at your ratings and your reviews, and you're doing very well.
Well, thank you very much. And it takes, for anyone out there thinking of writing or self-publishing, it's a very slow game. For people traditionally published or self-published, it takes many years to develop a following. And I don't have a huge following, but I have a following. Thank you to all of you out there. And I'm at book 7, and it's taken that long for people, some people to write and say they're looking forward to the book and that kind of thing.
So I saw that you do Kindle Unlimited, and how's that working for you in terms of exposure? Do you think that contributes to the number of sales you have?
I really, it's so hard to tell what, especially online. Some days I have no explanation for why I've sold 6 books, which is a huge day for me. And some days it's clear I've sold 2 because I spoke at the Jewish Center, or something like that. So I don't really know. I can figure certain things work for me, and that's mostly appearances in Chautauqua. And then some things I really can't explain what prompts it. I've done a lot of the stuff everybody writes about online to try and, tweak sales. And I've done some giveaways, and I've done some BookBub listings where you're the listed, mystery of the day. I've lowered my prices. I've raised my prices. The only thing that I can say for sure works. Oh, and I have a mailing, a MailChimp mailing that I try not to overdo, and I try to just send a few times a year. What do you do?
What do I do?
For you?
Well, I've got this blog called Author Groupie.
That's a good
I've
one.
never had so many people want to friend me on Facebook. Everybody and their brother wants to be my
Yes.
friend now, which is great.
I knew you'd be swamped.
I'm like you. I try a lot of different things.
Yes.
I speak at libraries with fellow members
Yes.
of different writing groups I'm with. And,
Yeah. That's a
we
good idea.
we all try different things. And I think for you, a
Yeah.
lot of it is sounds to me like because you're set in a real place, you're able to make personal appearances, which really
Yes.
too.
I think that that's something that I advise people when they're choosing what kind of book to self-publish. It helps to be set in a particular spot. So you have your niche, but you also could be a niche writer of a hobby. You could be a person who writes about dogs, a person who writes about fishing, because you have a built-in audience that you can market to. If you're seeking, I think, the bigger audience, it's harder to separate yourself from the pack.
I agree.
But I mean, not that it's easy anyway. It's always hard.
I think, I think everybody has problems with exposure,
Yes.
especially now.
Yeah.
Any plans to put your books in audiobooks?
I have one audiobook, and and that's a story I like to tell too. I live in a New York City apartment building, and my next door neighbors are actors.
Wow. Okay.
They're older people, and they have like kind of a starry resume past. They're not as busy nowadays as they had been as younger people, but they're a couple. And the man was in the original cast of The Fantastics off Broadway.
Okay.
So anyway, my next door neighbors were looking for a project. I was looking, would you guys like to do an audiobook? And they just threw themselves into it. I mean, they're pretty amazing because they're super talented, and they took it as like an opportunity. So they took a class at the Screen Actors Guild on how to make a home studio, and they built it in their closet.
You started a whole career for them, a whole new
for them. After my one book, they just finished recording for Lawrence Block.
Oh wow!
Seriously, I mean, so they're fabulous. They do a great job. But for us, we were just learning as we went, and they ended up, it was a little hard to figure out, how to get accepted by Audible and all that. And they're so brave. I mean, they end up not only making the book, but figuring out how to satisfy the standards of Audible. At one point, they brought in a friend who is a country western singer and a doorman at the Plaza Hotel.
Oh, wow.
So we were just a funny collection of New York types, and they succeeded, and they're going to do a second of my books now that they're home. They're stuck because of the pandemic. and that works, I guess, to my advantage. But they are looking for another project, and starting this weekend, they're going to do Vengeance is Mine, which is another one of my books.
That's so great. So really,
I'm very lucky.
The secret of audiobook success is moving to an apartment next to an actor. That's what you're telling us.
I would say that it's a success. We haven't sold very many copies, and I don't really understand that. I think that in some ways my audience is older people, and Audible makes it so hard to just buy one book. They just keep putting obstacles in your path. Am I offending everyone in this talk? I don't know.
I think people want to know what the story is. So I think people are going to appreciate this.
Download just one book because they want you to join.
Yeah.
And I just found people were thwarted by, trying to figure out how to download one book. I don't know. I don't listen to audiobooks regularly.
Well,
do you?
Audible does give you 25 review discount links that you can send out to reviewers or friends and hopefully get some reviews. So that's one way to start.
I never could figure out how to get any. I mean, people have so limited time. It's very hard, unless maybe they're commuting in a car, or something. Do you listen to audiobooks?
I did. I used to when I went to the gym and I go on the rowing machine. I listened to books. Not lately, I have to admit, but I have turned every book into an audiobook.
You have?
Yeah, I have.
Were you the narrator?
No, I was not. I actually went to Audible, and Audible has a company called ACX where you can
that's how we did it. Yeah.
You can audition various people and you can filter out what you want. And I was always looking for snarky, and I found some great people who would do the whole thing on a royalty share, so you didn't have to output a lot of money.
Yeah.
I've got two more questions.
Listen to yours. Okay.
They have nothing to do with books, but they have to do with bio.
Let's try it.
You wrote to me that you love musicals.
Yes, Broadway musicals, corny Broadway musicals.
What's your favorite musical?
My favorite musical is an old musical, and it's Showboat.
Okay.
It's most known for Old Man River, but I love some of the other music in that musical, and it's just spectacular. It's funny, sometimes people will play Broadway tunes, and it's all very modern stuff, and I love the modern stuff too, but I'm just a corny old musical lover.
I love musicals too, so I wanted
What's
to
your
touch base
favorite?
I'm torn between Chess and Pippin.
Oh, I love Chess. Yes, that's spectacular.
It's supposed to come back to Broadway, but it hasn't yet. And I love that score.
Yes, I love that too.
Last question. Again, nothing to do with books, but something to do with words.
Let's do
You're
it.
a Scrabble lover, and
yes,
my husband's huge Scrabble lover, as I am. And he always talks about his greatest Scrabble word that got the most points, because he got quixotic on a triple letter score, a double triple letter score. Do you have a favorite word?
Oh, I wish I did. I can't remember because I'm a little out of my Scrabble world. Okay. But maybe I'll twist this story to something else because you love puns. But one time, there's a group that are called Punderdome. Have you heard of them?
No, but I want to.
Okay. They're mostly very, very young people, and they're so witty, and they compete in different places in New York. And they invited the New York Post to send some of us headline writers to compete against them. And it's not the same skill. I mean, it was fun, but it's just, as much as you might think we're quick, we're not quick like on our feet, like instantaneous.
Like improvising.
And so, so these young people have like 30 seconds to come up with a pun-filled, account of shopping in a grocery store or something like that. So I know this isn't exactly the Scrabble question, so I don't know. I just
great because
leave it at that maybe it's something we could take an outing to together. But I would never compete again because it's just too quick on your feet kind of thing, and different from the kind of puns that I do at my desk, not on a stage in front of other people.
Yeah, I understand. My puns always come across better in print because I've had time to
You
think
do.
about them.
Yes, yes, you can polish them. Well,
Yeah.
give me your best pun. What, you
Oh,
got
God,
one
no.
or nothing on? No.
Oh gosh, I'll tell you, one of my best was from an improv class I used to take with
Okay.
Carl Kissin from Chicago City Limits, and if he's listening out
Wow.
there, big shout out to him. We were doing line by line, and we're in a circle, and we have to throw out a line, and then you have to follow with the next line. And they were talking
Yeah.
about a mail order bride, and this said she came from the Philippines, and I said, and I knew she was from the Philippines because she came in a manila envelope. So that was my best.
That's good.
And it was
That's
spur of
good.
the moment. And if I've
That's
offended anybody,
good.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I like that. I like that. That's excellent.
So thank you,
So-
Deb, for meeting with me. I think I'm out of questions, but I've had such a good time talking to you.
Thank you so much. I had a ball myself, and we'll have to have an outing together in New York.
Absolutely. Everybody rush out and buy the next book. Tell us
Crooked
again the title.
Paths.
Tell the title
Crooked
again.
Paths. Crooked Paths, a Chautauqua
Paths.
murder mystery.
Everybody go out and you've got to buy that. And,
Thank you for
and then
having
pick
me.
up all the other books while you're at it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much. And stay safe.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.